If you have never used a bullet journal before, then this video is for you. Or if you are somebody who has started a bullet journal, but maybe you failed at it, this video is also for you. And if you're watching this video when it comes out, you'll realize it is June. It's the middle of the year. Not your typical time of year to see this sort of content, because generally it's like the end of the year going into a new year when you see these sort of bullet journal setup videos. But I really wanted to share this today because I think that not only did I set up my own bullet journal recently in the middle of the year, you can start this at any time and you don't have to feel obligated to wait till the new year to set it up so that it starts right at January. And that's one of the great things about bullet journaling as well, is that it's specific to your life and your needs, and it can be whatever you want it to be. And just before we dive into my bullet journal setup and I show you exactly what it looks like and how to set it up, my only recommendation or piece of advice when you're starting out with a bullet journal would be to keep it honestly as simple as you possibly can. The trap that a lot of people fall into with bullet journaling is getting in over their head with all of these ideas for what they want it to be or what they want it to look like. You start scrolling on Pinterest and seeing all of this beautiful inspiration for all of these wonderful pages that you can design in your bullet journal. And while that is lovely, and some people are just so talented at that, practically it doesn't work for most of us. And if you really want to stick with using it and have it be a tool in your life to make your life easier, then keep it super simple and you won't regret it. Down the road you can always change it and tweak things and make it more fun and things like that, but for now, just starting out, keep it super simple. Okay, so let's get right into it. So the only tools that you really need for starting a bullet journal is a bullet journal itself and a pen or two. I use these Micron pens. This is a number 2 and I use sometimes a number 5 for like a thicker line, but you really only need one pen. I just happened to have a couple of these. A ruler in my mind is optional because of course it makes your lines look straighter and it's wonderful, but you can freehand your lines as well. It's not a big deal. So if you don't want to use a ruler, you don't have to, but I choose to use a ruler sometimes. I also have a few highlighters that I like to use that are Bible highlighters, so they work really well without bleeding through the page. So because I had them, they were just something that I added to highlight some sections of my bullet journal, but they're optional. And finally, some washi tape if you want. Again, it's another optional thing. I use it sometimes just to mark a page that I want to quickly reference, but if you don't have any, it's not a big deal. Most bullet journals come with a little bookmark, like a cloth bookmark in them as well, so that's always really helpful. This is my bullet journal. It is a Leuchtturm 1917. It is a dotted page bullet journal. It has the page numbers on it, which I love. It also has an index at the front that you can mark down what pages you have your content on. And for my bullet journal, I used my inspiration for my setup from a little bit from Pickup Limes, her bullet journal video, which I will link. It is really great for a minimal setup. And then I also went on Pinterest, not to scroll for endless inspiration, but just to get a weekly layout setup that I thought would work best for me. So I got some inspiration from there as well. And I'm going to show you exactly how I set it up and what it looks like. So on the first page, the first thing that I did was set up like a basic key, which is pretty common for most bullet journals. It kind of indicates what all of the different symbols mean. So if you have a task or a completed task, if you have to migrate a task, if you have an event, an appointment, or you're making a note, if something is priority, or if you've canceled something, that is kind of pretty basic to the original bullet journal key. So I keep that pretty simple and straightforward. And then I also marked down how many boxes I have going horizontally across the page and vertically down the page, just so that if I had to split my page into boxes for calendars, for example, I could easily reference this to see how many boxes I need. I did this because in the Pickup Limes video, it's something that she did and I thought it's a great idea. But in hindsight, truthfully, you don't really need to do that. You can kind of just eyeball the center of your page or thirds of your page. It doesn't have to be perfect, and that's part of the thing that held me up the first time I started bullet journaling, was thinking that it had to be perfect, and if it wasn't, I would beat myself up about it and want to start over. But there is beauty in the imperfection, so don't worry if your lines are always perfectly straight or your page is perfectly symmetrical. It's okay if it's not. After my key, then I have my year at a glance page, which again, because I started this particular bullet journal in June, I didn't start back at January. I just have June to November on these first 2 pages, and then I have December on the next page, and then I just left the rest of the following page blank in case I wanted to jot down any other yearly notes or events that came up that maybe I didn't have room for. Now, in a lot of bullet journals, you'll see following the yearly spread, that people start to put lists that they want to keep or trackers for the year. I didn't do that because, again, like I said, I want to keep this as simple as possible so that I stay consistent with it. So I jumped right into my monthly calendar. So I started again with June. And for this one, I did count the boxes and I divided up my page to make a calendar this way. This is how I prefer a monthly layout. There are tons of different options. I prefer having the layout this way so that I can see it all at once and I can jot down from my yearly calendar. I could flip back, look what I have listed down for June, and then mark that in my calendar for June here. And then, like I said, I did look on Pinterest for a weekly setup page and I landed on something like this. So on the one side of the page, I have the week that it is with a small little calendar to highlight the particular week, and then I break it down by day as well as a section for notes at the bottom. This is the setup that I like. I'm trying it out. If I feel like I need to change it up or it's not working for me, I can always switch it week to week to see what works best. But for now, this is the setup that I'm going with. And on the following page beside it, I just divided the page into two sections. I have a weekly brain dump and a weekly journal notes section. So for me, again, I kept it really simple. The brain dump is simply anything that comes to mind that I want to jot down, things to do, maybe things I want to look into, anything that is in my brain that I want to get out on paper, basically. And then the weekly journal notes is just kind of to keep track of things that went on that week, how I was feeling that week, so just as like a little way to look back and reference how the weeks have gone and how I've been feeling overall, and anything that I want to just jot down personally, I put in that spot there. So I do that for each week for the month. And then after the last week of the month, I start again with a new month. So I have just recently set up July. Again, I'm doing the same sort of weekly setup. So I have the week at the top, the breakdown, and then I do the weekly brain dump and weekly journal notes. Now, because I didn't include lists and trackers at the beginning of my bullet journal like a lot of people do, again, because I wanted to keep it as simple as possible, for me, it is strictly a calendar and to-do list and just some notes, getting things out of my head onto paper. What I did decide to do, because I want to kind of test this out, I'm leaving the back of my bullet journal empty, and obviously I'm going to leave room for the weeks to come for the rest of the year. But if there is a particular list or a type of tracker, something that I want to keep track of, I will just go to the back of my bullet journal. I'll put a little piece of washi tape there, and I will create a tracker or a list there. And that way, when I set up a new bullet journal for 2025, I can say, okay, these types of lists or trackers were helpful for me, and maybe I will now include them at the beginning of my bullet journal so that they're easy to reference and keep track of on a daily basis. But that, for me, is kind of what this bullet journal is for, is to first and foremost function as a practical way to keep track of my calendar and my daily to-dos and keep my life kind of organized in that sense. And then it's a trial and error process. I don't feel like it has to be perfect right from the start. I can play around with different types of setups, what works for a monthly spread or a weekly spread, and then just see what kind of lists and trackers I like, what I don't like, what actually gets used and tracked and what doesn't. And honestly, that's it. That is probably one of the more simple bullet journal setups that you'll see, because there's not much involved other than your yearly spread, monthly spread, and weekly spread, and those few little notes of like a brain dump or journal notes. For me, it's been a few weeks of doing it this way, and I find that I'm able to stay on top of it every single day. I hope you found that helpful. Again, I just want to encourage you that if you've thought about starting a bullet journal, you should definitely do it. It doesn't have to be overwhelming or intimidating. It can be super simple, super minimal, and it can be a great tool to help keep your life organized, keep all your thoughts organized. I highly encourage you to get started on one if you haven't already. Doesn't matter what time of the year it is. Anytime is a good time to start. If you got some value from this video, please give it a like and consider subscribing to my channel. I talk a lot about minimalism and simple living. This is one way that I try to simplify my life, and it has worked really, really well. I appreciate you being here and spending this time with me. I will see you in my next video.